Lee Van Cleef was born on January 9, 1925, in Somerville, New Jersey. His rugged features, intense gaze, and uncompromising presence would eventually make him one of the most iconic villains in cinematic history. Though his name became synonymous with the Western genre, his story is more than a biography of an actor. It is a tale of resilience, transformation, and artistic mastery. Van Cleef's life was shaped by discipline, hardship, and a drive to prove himself in a Hollywood that rarely rewarded those who didn't fit its traditional mold. From the quiet streets of Somerville to the brutal realities of war, and finally to the gritty world of spaghetti westerns, Van Cleef's journey was never simple. His legacy survives not because he played the hero, but because he redefined what it meant to be the villain. Early life, discipline, and determination. Growing up in a modest household in New Jersey, Van Cleef was raised with a strong work ethic and an unwavering sense of responsibility. His father, a watchmaker, taught him the importance of precision, patience, and attention to detail, traits that would later define his acting style. He was not born into privilege, and his childhood experiences gave him a grounded perspective that remained with him throughout his life. As a young man, he joined the U.S. Navy during World War II and served as a radio operator, experiencing combat firsthand. Those years left a lasting impression on him, shaping the hardened characters he would later portray. After the war, Van Cleef pursued engineering at the University of South Carolina. But the lure of acting pulled him toward Hollywood, where he hoped to transform his restless ambition into a career. Hollywood beginnings, a long road to recognition. Van Cleef's early Hollywood career was far from glamorous. He started with minor, often uncredited roles in films like High Noon, 1952, where he played a silent henchman whose menace was felt more than seen. His sharp features and intense stare made him a natural fit for villainous roles, but Hollywood typecast him as a one-dimensional antagonist. Throughout the 1950s and early 1960s, he built a steady but unremarkable career, appearing in supporting roles in westerns and television shows. Despite his talent, he struggled to break free from the limited roles offered to him. Personal setbacks, including health problems from a serious car accident, further slowed his progress. Still, Van Cleef persisted, honing his craft and waiting for the opportunity that would finally allow him to step into the spotlight. The turning point, a director's vision. Van Cleef's breakthrough came when director Sergio Leone recognized what others had overlooked: his ability to bring depth and complexity to the villain. Leone cast him as Angel Eyes in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, 1966, a role that transformed Van Cleef's career and secured his place in cinematic history. While Clint Eastwood's Man with No Name became the face of the film, it was Van Cleef's chilling portrayal of the cold-blooded bounty hunter that lingered in viewers' minds. His performance was not simply menacing, it was precise, controlled, and deeply unsettling. Angel Eyes was not a caricature of evil, but a layered figure with his own moral code. Through this role, Van Cleef redefined the villain, turning him into a character audiences could not forget. The performance elevated Van Cleef from a reliable character actor to an unforgettable cinematic force. The spaghetti western era, crafting a new villain. Following his breakthrough, Van Cleef became a central figure in the spaghetti western movement. In For a Few Dollars More, 1965, he played the cunning outlaw Colin Douglas Mortimer, a character whose intelligence and ruthlessness were masked by quiet confidence. In The Big Gundown, 1966, he shifted to a lawman-turned-hunter, further demonstrating his versatility. Van Cleef's villains were never simple. They were often guided by personal codes and inner conflicts that made them feel human. In films like Death Rides a Horse, 1967, and Day of Anger, 1967, he portrayed aging gunslingers whose experience gave them a tragic dignity. His ability to blend menace with vulnerability made him one of the most compelling actors of the era. Through these roles, Van Cleef did not merely play villains, he reinvented them, giving the Western genre a darker, more realistic emotional depth. Beyond Westerns, a new generation of fans. Although Van Clee became legendary for westerns, his talent extended beyond the dusty frontier. In the 1970s and 1980s, he began appearing in action films and television, reaching audiences who had never seen him in the spaghetti westerns. His commanding voice and presence made him ideal for intense, physical roles, and he became known for playing dangerous, relentless figures. Films like Escape from New York, 1981, where he played the menacing Hawk, and The Octagon, 1980, in which he shared the screen with Chuck Norris, introduced him to a new generation. He also appeared in television series like The Master, 1984, where he played a martial arts expert. These roles expanded his range and cemented his reputation as a versatile actor who could dominate any screen, whether big or small. Personal life, love, loss, and stability. Van Clee's personal life was marked by relationships that reflected both struggle and devotion. His first marriage to Patty Ruth Cale in 1943 produced 3 children, David, Alan, and Deborah. The marriage lasted 15 years but eventually ended in 1958, a time when his career was still uncertain and his life was in flux. In 1960, he married Joan Margery Draw, a union that coincided with his rise to international fame through Leone's films. Their relationship lasted until 1974, a period of dramatic change for Van Clee as he transformed from a supporting actor to a leading figure in Western cinema. In 1976, he married Barbara Havalone, a partnership that would last until his death. Barbara provided stability during his later years, supporting him through health struggles and the gradual decline of his career. A scar of sacrifice. The finger injury. One of the most striking personal details about Van Clee was the injury he sustained while building a playhouse for his daughter, Deborah. He lost the last joint of his right-hand middle finger in the accident, a physical reminder of his role as a devoted father. The injury could have become a barrier, but Van Clee adapted, learning to hide the missing joint in his performances. To audiences, it was barely noticeable, but to those who knew him well, it symbolized the sacrifices he made for family and career. Even as he became famous for playing cold-blooded killers and ruthless outlaws, this small personal tragedy revealed a softer, more human side. It was a reminder that behind the intense characters was a man who cared deeply for his children and was willing to endure pain for them. The feud. Van Clee's disdain. For John Wayne. Van Clee's hatred for John Wayne was not simply professional rivalry. It was a deep ideological and personal conflict. Wayne represented the old guard American Western hero, strong, righteous, and uncomplicated. Van Clee, by contrast, embodied the darker, morally ambiguous anti-hero of the spaghetti western. He saw Wayne's acting as formulaic and his persona as superficial. Politically, the divide widened further. Wayne was famously conservative and nationalistic, while Van Clee leaned toward more progressive ideals and viewed Wayne's public support for militarism as distasteful. The two men rarely saw eye to eye, and their clashes were intensified by their opposing views of the Western genre itself. Van Clee believed his films reflected a truer, more complex reality, while Wayne's works promoted a sanitized version of history. Their feud became part of Hollywood legend, a collision of values, styles, and eras. Conclusion. A legacy that endures. Lee Van Clee passed away on December 16, 1989, at the age of 64, leaving behind a legacy that remains powerful and unforgettable. He did not simply play villains. He transformed them into characters with depth, intelligence, and a haunting humanity. His work helped redefine the Western genre, shifting it from clear-cut morality to a darker, more realistic landscape. Though his name may not have achieved the universal recognition of some of his peers, his influence is undeniable. His performances in The Good, The Bad, and The Ugly and For a Few Dollars More remain benchmarks of cinematic villainy, setting the standard for generations of actors who followed. Van Clee's life was a testament to perseverance, reinvention, and the power of dedication. Even decades after his death, he remains one of the most compelling figures in film history, an actor whose legacy continues to echo through the world of cinema.